Welcome. Hi. This is Sharon Henderson, and I'm doing my weekly live in the entrepreneurs, marketing, and WordPress community. So today I'm going to talk to you about how you can go ahead and change your domain name at your registry. And for those people that aren't aware about domain names, your domain name is basically what you see in your URL, so in your browser bar. So, for example, what I see at the moment in my browser bar is StreamYard.com, and then / and then whatever page we're on at StreamYard. So the StreamYard.com part is the domain name, and that's what we register, and that's what is really important for our business. And that is because we have a brand association attached to our domain name. So I personally have quite a few domain names. For example, I've got SharonXHenderson.com is the most recent one that I bought. And the reason I have the X in there is because I don't have a middle name. And so it's become something of a joke that whenever I've worked in different companies, they've always put an X there when they've been setting up my logon. So it's kind of stuck. So my domain name is SharonXHenderson.com. And what I do when I'm building a website is I don't normally build it using that specific domain name. And the reason for that is that I don't want people to be able to see a half-developed site. I want them to see the site when it's ready. So I will normally build on a very obscure domain name. And that domain name might be, I don't know, anything. It could be any of my old domains. And then I tend to create a subdomain. Now, a subdomain would be something like, let's say I have website as my subdomain. Then when I register that subdomain at the domain registry, then my full URL will be website.sharonxhenderson.com. And to be honest, nobody is going to think, okay, if I type this in, then I'm going to find her website there being built. So I normally use obscure URLs using an obscure domain name, or use a subdomain in there as well. So I'll build my site, and then I won't go back to the registry to change my domain name to what I actually want it to be on until the site is built. And at that point, I will go in and I'll change that over. And that was what I was going to show you today, how you actually go ahead and switch over a domain name. So if you're using a web host like Cloudways, they have quite a handy function, which is that when you install a WordPress website, it will actually install it automatically on a staging site, which is a really obscure domain that no one's going to know. And the domain is actually supplied by Cloudways. So it will be www.cloudways.com / and then a whole heap of gobbledygook, and you can just use that domain to build, and then once you're ready you can go ahead and switch it over to whichever domain you want. But most of the other web hosts require you to have a domain at the outset. So what I might do is share my screen. If no one has any questions at the stage, then I'll go ahead and share my screen, and I'll show you how you can make changes at Namecheap, because that's a really good one to demonstrate, because a lot of people use it. Click on that one and see. There we go. So this is Namecheap here, and this is what your dashboard will look like. And what you see here are various domain names that I have registered with Namecheap. I've got domain names registered all over the place with all sorts of different registrars. For example, if I have a .nz domain, then to my knowledge, only New Zealand registrars enable you to purchase .nz domains. So I have my .nz domains elsewhere. So let's say we're going into this one here, which is the one I was talking to you about, SharonXHenderson.com. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to click Manage. And here we go. So with Namecheap, each registrar sets things up a little bit differently. But with this one, you can see that you have the domain information here. I've kept my name servers with Namecheap, but you can change that. For example, if you wanted to use a CDN or content delivery network to speed up your site, and I probably will do that with this one when I get round to it, then you would change your name servers to custom DNS, and then you can add in name servers for Cloudfare is probably your best bet, because they're a free content delivery network, and they just basically boost the speed of the site delivery to the visitors. But I'm not going to do that for this one, so I'm not going to mess about with it. The reason for that is if I were to mess around with this and I click tech, then there becomes a propagation time. These things don't happen instantaneously. They take time to propagate. So there are different sites you can go to that will show you where in the country the name server changes have taken place, and it happens bit by bit, country by country, and it can take up to 42 or even 48 to even 72 hours at times for full propagation across the globe to happen. So I'm not going to mess with that one right now because it's going to disrupt my site. And if it's done correctly, especially with Cloudfare, then you don't actually notice the differences happening because to the untrained eye, it just looks like normal. But if you were to make any changes while propagation is happening, then you could lose those changes. So while propagation is happening, while that information is being moved from one place to another, you shouldn't really mess with your website. In other cases, a site can go down completely, and I've certainly experienced that too, and it's not much fun. That just depends. So that's more where you're migrating sites as well, which is a little bit different. That's where you're migrating or moving a site, an entire site, from one server to another. And in that case, you can get downtime with your website. Cloudflare's pretty good though. Okay, so I'm keeping my name servers where they are in this particular instance, and everything else is pretty much of a muchness. If I want to add a record, an A record, which is what I'd want to do here if I want to change my domain and where it's pointing, is I'd have to go to Advanced DNS and scroll down here. And what you see here is there are already A records in place. That's an IP address. So that is pointing my domain where my server is. So if I ever want to change where my site is pointing, then I have to change this value here. And let's say I had a staging site and I wanted to change where my domain was pointing so that it was then pointing at my new site. I'd have to figure out what the IP address is for my server where my site is, and then I would change this record here and update it with whichever IP address for my server is required. So I hope that makes sense. It really is as simple as that. Now, this text record here, that is an SPF record, and that is for email purposes. And essentially what it does is it cuts down the chance of your email being treated as spam. And it just adds a level of security to it. And you can see here that this particular site is being hosted with SiteGround. So this is SiteGround's IP address. And you can see here the code that SiteGround have given me, or that I've looked up on their site, which gives me the relevant SPF record that I need to add here as a text record in order for my email addresses to work correctly. Now, if I directed my entire name server to SiteGround, or in other words, if I had moved my DNS completely over to SiteGround, then this text record wouldn't be required. They would handle that themselves. But in this situation, I needed that because I was getting some issues with my emails going to spam. So this resolved that for me. And then here we have MX records. Whenever you have a site that you want to run email from, you need to add MX records. And again, those details will be given to you by your web host or whoever is hosting your email. So that's what those are. And TTL is time to live. And that's how long it's going to take before your changes go live. And the recommended setting here is automatic. With your IP addresses, the TTL can be a minute. And what I find with Namecheap is that generally, any changes that I make at the registry tend to propagate really quickly. So my delay is minimal, and that's why I really like them. If I was using something like Namecheap, for example, not Namecheap, one of the New Zealand-based companies that provides the .nz domains, then I do find that they are a lot slower. And I've struggled for 3 days before propagations happen. So it's interesting how it's so dependent on your domain registrar. So that, in a nutshell, is how you change your domain name to at the domain registrar, how you change your records so that you can point your domain at whichever site you want to point it at. And then what will happen is that when I go to my SharonXHenderson.com site, that's the URL that you will see there. Yeah. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you all same time next week. Until then, see you later. Bye.